Okay, so I don't really know how to start this video, but when I was reading Lord of the Rings the other day, and I got to the section with Éowyn after the Battle of Helm's Deep, I just could not help but think that she is the female version of Boromir. Hear me out. I think they're the same person, or close to the same person, in a male and female body. So their experiences remain drastically different, and their nurture is also drastically different. And their parentage is also drastically different, which leads them to be drastically different characters. But their nature is the same as each other. I'm not going to say it's identical because I'd be maybe going too far, but I think it's pretty close to it. So what I want to do now is just show how I think these two characters are wildly similar to each other in the book. And know that I'm really talking about the book differences here, because in the movies, they're probably somewhat similar, but this sword wielding of Éowyn here is deeper in the books than they are in the movies. And know that I'm also reading this for the first time, and I am currently obsessing over it and just want to talk about it all the time. So make sure you subscribe if you like this video, and if you want more videos that are kind of like this, which is just me talking about my first time read through and writing tons of video essays. I have a ton of stuff on my channel that is just me reading this for the first time, and some other books as well. But let me do a character study first on Boromir, because he's very different in book and movie. Slightly, but still different. In the book, Boromir is a bit more after his own glory than I think the glory of Gondor. Now, in the movies, he very much seems like he's after the glory of Gondor. I think in the books, it's a little tainted with his own glory. Although, again, the glory of Gondor is probably second on his list. He loves that city. And Faramir says this about him: "If it, being the ring, were a thing that gave advantage in battle, I can well believe that Boromir, the proud and fearless, often rash, ever anxious for the victory of Minas Tirith, and his own glory therein, might desire such a thing and be allured by it. Boromir is looking for the glory of Minas Tirith, and then his own glory therein." Now, this is an excellent character study that Faramir is doing of his brother here, and he knows that Boromir has a bit of pride and wants to gain glory and renown. Now, this isn't just evident in the words that Faramir says, but in all of Boromir's actions. I think he was tempted by the ring in different ways because he simply has deep lingering pride issues, and he wants to be the hero of the story. He doesn't have the wisdom, however, to know that the ring would destroy him, which is, again, his pride showing. But this is part of the reason why I think we love this character, and why I think Boromir is getting a resurgence as one of the best characters in the Fellowship, because he's not perfect, he's flawed, but still daring and brave in spite of that. So he's a great character, but he has his issues, which oddly feels similar to all of us. He's less someone to aspire to be, like what most of Tolkien's characters in the Fellowship actually are, and much more of a reflection of what we currently are. There's a moment, which is one of my favorite Boromir moments in the entire series. And again, I will get back to Éowyn in a second, but I just wanted to lay the groundwork for Boromir, because Éowyn is this to me. But there's a moment when they're in Moria, and they're about to face off against the Balrog, and Boromir does two things. He blows his horn, which stops the Balrog in its tracks for a few seconds, and then he charges out toward the bridge with Aragorn in defense of Gandalf. It's beautifully brave of him. But later, when he falls because of his pride, we learn that all his brave acts were because he sought to gain renown. Now, again, I'm going to keep diving into Boromir as a character, but let me transition to Éowyn here, because this is really what this essay is all about. In the second chapter of The Return of the King, when she proclaims her love to Aragorn and is kindly rejected, and I made a video about that, about how she is rejected using archaic language, but she is constantly talking in that same way that Boromir talks. It's like she has a lust for battle, but she's caged, which is her great fear. And I want to talk about this idea in a little bit too, because the whole thing of these two characters being the same but being different and born and raised in different circumstances plays into what I think Tolkien really wants us to understand about these two characters, and about what society is giving them as a whole. And Éowyn is just so interesting of a character. But this is what Tolkien says of her in the first chapter when the men are riding back to the Harrowdale. "The Lady Éowyn greeted them, and was glad of their coming. For no mightier men had she seen than the Dunedain, and the fair sons of Elrond. But on Aragorn, most of all, her eyes rested. Now, I want to stop here because maybe this is a controversial opinion for movie watchers. I don't think it is for book readers. But she is already looking at these men with longing. And it's interesting because for my first read, I interpreted this look as that she gives Aragorn as desire. And I still do think part of it is desire for him, but I now almost think this is mixed with jealousy. Not that Aragorn might love another woman, but because Éowyn doesn't really know about Arwen, but she's jealous that this man is leading men into battle and winning renown. She is so attracted to this idea of renown and this idea of glory that might actually be the real reason why she desires Aragorn. It might be less out of how well they could work together and be a good couple than more about what Aragorn is currently doing in his life and what Éowyn really wants to be. Because the text goes on and says this, "And when they sat at supper with her, they talked together. And she heard of all that had passed since Theoden rode away, concerning which only hasty tidings had yet reached her. And when she heard of the battle in Helm's Deep, and the great slaughter of their foes, and of the charge of Theoden and his knights, then her eyes shone." She is salivating for glory right now. She is the female version of Boromir if Boromir couldn't fight and had to go sit and watch by the sideline while everyone else fought. Her eyes are shining when they talk about the slaughtering of their foes. I don't think she wants Aragorn. I think she wants the slaughtering of her foes. And Aragorn is doing that, so she thinks she wants Aragorn, but she just wants that badly. And then when Aragorn tells them when they're going, and she says there's no road there, this is their conversation. "Nay, lady," he said, "I am not astray, for I walked in this land ere you were born to grace it. There is a road out of this valley, and that road I shall take. Tomorrow I shall ride by the paths of the dead." Then she stared at him as one that is stricken, and her face blanched, and for long she spoke no more, while all sat silent. "But Aragorn," she said at last, "is it then your errand to seek death? For that is all that you will find on that road. They do not suffer the living to pass. They may suffer me to pass," said Aragorn. "But at least I will adventure it. No other road will serve." "But this is madness," she said. "For here are men of renown and prowess, whom you should not take into the shadows, but should lead to war, where men are needed. I beg you to remain and ride with my brother, for then all our hearts will be gladdened and our hope be the brighter." Note how she said men of renown and prowess, because this comes up later and it's an ongoing theme with what she talks about with Aragorn. She's much less interested in Aragorn, who he is as a person, much more interested in him as a renown getter. But then there comes a lot of silence, and this is what the text says after that. "Aragorn," she said, "why will you go on this deadly road?" "Because I must," he said. "Only so can I see any hope of doing my part in the war against Sauron. I do not choose paths of peril, Éowyn. Were I to go where my heart dwells far in the north, I would now be wandering in the fair valley of Rivendell." For a while she was silent, as if pondering what this might mean. Then suddenly she laid her hand on his arm. "You are a stern lord, and resolute," she said. "And thus do men win renown." She paused. "Lord," she said, "if you must go, then let me ride in your following, for I am weary of skulking in the hills, and wish to face peril and battle." I don't think she really realizes this yet, but I don't really think that she desires Aragorn for a companion. I want to keep harping on this idea. I think she is doing this out of jealousy for who he is and for what he is doing in his life. And while I actually do think they'd be kind of a cute couple, I think there would be a lot of issues in that marriage, and it wouldn't really feel like an equal marriage to me. I think there'd always be an issue where Aragorn... I was talking about this in live the other day, but I think Aragorn needs someone who knew him before he was like a man of renown and before he was a king. And I think Arwen is that, because I think they met when Aragorn was about 20 years old. And he doesn't need someone like Éowyn who knows him when he's this kingly figure, because that's kind of what she wants. She wants someone of renown, someone who is this kingly person who can kind of give her this glory. I think that's kind of what she's looking for, but in a much more pure way than I think some of these other characters are looking for. She's not just like on this jealous lust for slaughtering people. I think she's an incredible character. I think she just feels caged, which is kind of what she's talking about later on. And so I don't really think their marriage would work that well, to be honest. But Éowyn keeps going, wishing that her duty was not to do what she had to fulfill, but that she can go and win renown. She says, "Shall I always be chosen?" she said bitterly. "Shall I always be left behind when the riders depart, to mind the house while they win renown, and find food and beds when they return? I am of the house Eorl, and not a serving woman. I can ride and wield blade, and I do not fear either pain or death." "What do you fear, lady?" he asked. "A cage," she said, "to stay behind bars until use and old age accept them, and all chance of doing great deeds is gone beyond recall or desire. Yet I do not bid you flee from peril, but to ride to battle where your sword may win renown and victory." She keeps talking about renown. This is crazy. "I would not see a thing that is high and excellent cast away needlessly." "Nor would I," he said. "Therefore I say to you, stay, for you have no errand to the south. Neither have those others who go with thee. They go only because they would not be parted from thee, because they love thee." Then she turned and vanished into the night. Again, this is touching on the whole romantic thing that they were going through here, but I just think this is less romance now and more of a bit jealousy after I read this for a second time and a third time. But I really do love her as a character. She's kind of struggling. She's young, so we have to give her a little bit of leeway. She's about 23, 24 years old. But I think she's just really interesting, especially her line about fear. I think it's really astute because I think that she is caged and that she hates it. And she'd rather do what she wants to do and be free to do, or at least be bound to a man that is fighting. But her situation and her circumstances dictate what she must do, and she cannot deal with this like other characters in the book can. She is young, and I think a bit immature. But this is also the reason why we love her so much, because she is flawed like Boromir. She's feisty. She wants something that she cannot have, and I just feel so bad for her in this moment, especially what comes later in this chapter. She just has to learn as well. She kind of just needs to sit and learn. She thinks that these men are going out because of their desire to win renown, but the majority of them are actually going out for duty in order that they might keep the ones they love alive. Now, some are absolutely fighting to become legendary, but I think most of them, and most of the people in Middle-earth right now, are fighting for other reasons. And I think that the reason is a duty to each other and a duty to Middle-earth. I think Éowyn is glorifying battle in kind of what it looks like. I think to these veterans, I don't think they look at it in that way in any way. This is kind of exhibited by Pippin in the prior chapter, not really wanting to talk about the encounter with the Black Rider. I don't really think any of these characters really glory in their own renown. The two that I have seen thus far are Boromir and Éowyn, which is why I think they're so similar to each other. But her story gets sadder because she doesn't let these words stop her. It's a rough section of the book. But before Aragorn's crew is about to leave in the morning, she comes clad with a sword, and this is what the text says. "Farewell, Lady of Rohan. I drink to the fortunes of your house, and of you, and of all your people. Say to your brother, beyond the shadows we may meet again." Then it seemed to Gimli and Legolas, who were nearby, that she wept. And in one so stern and proud, that seemed more grievous. But she said, "Aragorn, wilt thou go?" "I will," he said. "Then wilt thou not let me ride with this company as I have asked?" "I will not, lady," he said, "for that I could not grant without the leave of the king and of your brother, and they will not return until tomorrow. But I count now every hour, indeed every minute. Farewell." Then she fell on her knees, saying, "I beg thee." "Nay, lady," he said, and taking her by the hand, he raised her. Then he kissed her hand and sprang into the saddle and rode away, and did not look back. And only those who knew him well and were near to him saw the pain that he bore. But Éowyn stood, still as a figure carven in stone, her hands clenched at her sides, and she watched them until they passed into the shadows, under the black Dwimmerberg, the haunted mountain, in which was the door of the dead. When they were lost to view, she turned, stumbling as one that is blind, and went back to her lodging. She hates her position, and she is so upset that she cannot go with these men, even though she disagrees about where they want to go. She is bound to duty, and Aragorn reminds her of that. If she were born a man, maybe she would have been a mighty warrior, and maybe a mighty leader. But she likely would have had the same problems she does now, and I think she would have been like Boromir, falling to the temptation of the ring. I think she would have wanted too much renown and glory for herself, and her fall may have ultimately been the temptation of the ring, exactly like Boromir. So, save her people and win renown for herself by taking the ring. But I just find it such an interesting commentary of Tolkien, of two people who, to me, seem to have the same motivation, but were raised in totally different circumstances and situations, and how they are fundamentally the same character, but because of life circumstances and because of how Middle-earth is, they're raised totally different, and they're very, very distinct from each other. Boromir seems to be carrying a burden of his father into the glory of Gondor. Éowyn doesn't carry that kind of burden, but wants to carry it immensely. And so they have different ways that they act, but they have the same underlying belief in renown and glory for its own sake and for their own sake. And this is why I think that they're such similar characters to each other. But that's kind of my 2 cents. Let me know what else you might think about this, and if you agree or totally disagree on it. Make sure you like the video if you made it this far, and subscribe for more of this kind of content. And as always, remember to look toward Numenor that was, and beyond to Elvenhome that is, and to that which is beyond Elvenhome, and will ever be. I'll see you in the next one.